Ayn, when it says the eye of God, the eye of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The word ayn has multiple meanings in Arabic, but the first thing that comes to our mind is a resemblance to human being, to creation. So what's the first thing we need to do? This similarity. The first thing is called tanzih. Tanzih. Tanzih means that we absolve what? In our mind, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, of any comparison to creation. So what do? We have the word wajh, face. We say it's not this. We have the word eye. We say it's not that. We have the word two fingers, comes in hadith. It's not this. And that's why some of the ulama, they can have issues with people. Some of the ulama say it's problematic where if you quote a hadith and say, which says inna quluba bani adam bayna isba'ayn min asabi ar-rahman, that the hearts of human beings are between two fingers, and you start doing that, you say, what's that got to do with it? What's that got to do with it? That's got nothing to do with it. That's why they say nuzul Allah ta'ala, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala descends in the last day, and you start descending. What's that got to do with it? It's got nothing to do with what Allah subhanahu, because this is all not human, this is all created. We have to begin by absolving of any similarity. That's even why it's saying fawq, above. When you say above, what have you now done? You put Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala into a direction and a location. Impossible. Impossible. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created space, He created direction. He's not physically above. So what do we do now with all of these? And that's why one of our teachers said, if somebody points up, someone said, cut his hand off. Because to compare Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to human beings is one of the worst crimes you can do with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. To compare Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to creation. So what do? Anything, principle, anything in the Quran or in the Sunnah where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala uses a phrase that seems to indicate resemblance to creation, we absolve Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala of any resemblance based upon the attribute that we're talking about, mukhalafat al-hawadith. That's always the beginning point. And there's no difference in Ahl Sunnah wal Jama'ah, whether it's the Salaf or the Khalaf. And we have a difference now in the second stage. But the first stage, there's no difference whatsoever. The Salaf, the early Muslims, who are the Salaf? Sahaba, Tabi'een, Tabi'een, the blessed three generations. You're not going to say, you cannot say that when they heard the verse face, they started thinking about a face. Or when they heard two fingers, they started thinking about two fingers. They understood the Quran, they understood belief, they understood lam yakul lahu kufuwan ahad. They never had this idea whatsoever within them that we can keep these on the literal, not the word, the meaning. We can keep the meaning as it is. The word, yes, we do not negate that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has a face. You cannot say that. Like some people say, Imam Abu Hanif in Fiqh al-Akbar, he confirms that he's established on the throne. You say, absolutely, he's established on his throne. Doesn't mean he sat on his throne. Doesn't mean he sat on his throne, which is what you're trying to imply, which is what unfortunately some people are trying to imply. It doesn't mean he sat on his throne. It says Allah subhanahu mustawin ala arshih, that he's established on his throne. Doesn't mean he sat on his throne. Nowhere in Quran and Sunnah does it say Allah subhanahu sits on his throne. But some people now who are going down this path are saying he sits on his throne. And the faqir, when we were in Damascus, I was having a discussion with a person who had these ideas. And he says to me straight, he says, look, he said, istawa, he said, I'm doing it right now. He said, I am established on this. So what's that got to do with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Are you now comparing? But he clearly had in his mind that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is elevated above something. He's on something. That's tajseem. That's not where you're giving Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala human forms, which is problematic in belief. So all we need to do is begin with negating any comparison whatsoever. And we push it as far as possible. Absolve Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala of any comparison whatsoever to creation. Then what's left after that? Note here, because this is the accusation that comes. When Ahl Sunnah wal Jama'ah, the Orthodox Muslim, negate any resemblance, they're not saying that the word doesn't exist. They're saying Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has a wajh, He has a face, He has a hand, He has two fingers. But it's definitely not what we understand it to be. It's not this, because if you think Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is this, you've now made Him a human being. It's not these two fingers. Like, as an example of that, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran, فَإِنَّكَ تَجْرِي بِأَعْيُنِنَا. And this highlights those who say this have a clear concept of a human being. They're falling into that path. You'll hear they'll say Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has two eyes. Why? It doesn't say in the Quran and the Sunnah two eyes. It says in the Quran, لِتُصْنَعَ عَلَى عَيْنٍ Surah Taha. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that you will be dealt with, Sayyidina Musa alayhi salam, with our eye. Mufrad, singular eye, ayn, one eye. Then it says, فَإِنَّكَ تَجْرِي بِأَعْيُنِنَا, that you move within our eyes. That's the literal translation. There's nowhere in Quran and Sunnah that says two. So why are you saying two? You're reading books of Aqida, some people say Allah subhanahu has two eyes. Where is it in Quran and Sunnah that says two? Nothing whatsoever. Now what we need you to do first is negate the literal of one eye and three eyes. Well, what's the argument that's used? So one eye is a cyclops, three eyes is a deformity. So you must have two eyes. Why? Because you've compared them to a human being. You've got this picture of a human being in your mind. And that's why you say, why is two eyes necessary in your idea? Because that's perfection. With whom? With God or with human beings? With human beings. What's that telling you? You're judging Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala based upon human beings. That's why he said he can't have one. That's why he said he can't have three. Even though in the Quran he says one. In the Quran he says plural. But you're now saying you can't have that. So we must say in an absolute sense that we negate the literal. And that's what tanzih is. That's the beginning point within Ahlul Sunnah wal Jama'ah. Any description of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that resembles creation, we negate it in the literal sense. What then do we do after that? Two ways. After that, you're then left with two possibilities.